Hey, how's it going, everybody? Scott Spreitzer here. He's Tony George. We are DocSports.com, and this is your weekly six-pack. 3 college football games, 3 NFL games. We're going to cover them all 6, over the next few minutes. And listen, I know you guys can see that free $60 account banner up top. And if you click on the link below the video and get yourself started and sign up for that free $60 account, you can use those $60 on any of Tony's daily packages, any of mine over at DocSports.com, a handicapper of your choice. It's as simple as that if you're not yet a member at DocSports.com. Basically what it is a great way to give DocSports.com a trial run. Well, you know, I'm looking at the games this week, Mr. George, and I'm like, okay, obviously when there's point spreads, there's always interest for guys like us. But from a marquee standpoint, oh my gosh, this week's card is kind of ugly. There's a couple of games if you look hard enough, but you know, I thought, all right, well, let's start with our obligatory SEC matchup on the six-pack. And this week, even though the line's big, it's still a point spread, and it's Georgia laying 22.5 at Kentucky, total 49.5. A lot of folks thought that Georgia would be flat last week, and they had no problem going into Starkville taking care of business. At the same time, Kentucky might have got caught looking ahead to this game with Georgia because they get upended by Vanderbilt. They get upset by Vandy. Oh. Strong defensive team is, you know, are the Kentucky Wildcats. They can't run. They can't pass. It's hard to see them hanging this number. Your thoughts on this game?
I was shocked that the last couple of weeks, Kentucky put up 21 on Missouri. We saw what Tennessee did to them, Missouri.
Sure.
They put up 21 on Vandy. They have the number 103rd ranked offense when it comes to production. I still trying to figure out what Mel Kiper was smoking when he was touting this Levis is going to be the best quarterback taken in the draft. The guy can't get out of his own way. He can't make a big play. They can't get their running game going. That's not going to bode well. We talked about this last week on the video about the Georgia-Mississippi State game. I said there is no letdown. Mm-hmm. I go, Kirby Smart does not let them get down. They show up, spitting nails, ready to go. You know, they want to win a national title. They want to win the SEC. They want to win the SEC more than they want to win the national title. Because if you win the SEC, chances are you're probably going to win the national title. You know, and I took a look at this game. You know, Kentucky, 9-1 to the under this year. 10-1 dating back to their last game. Combined, 15-4-1 to the under. I'd be surprised if Kentucky scores 10 and Georgia does enough to get out of here. They're not going to do anything to hurt themselves. They got Georgia Tech on deck for the annual in-state rivalry game, which they can name the score on in that one too. But I'm going to play the under 49 here, Scott. I'm not interested in 22.5, although I could easily see a 35-7 ball game here. Yeah, I don't think Kentucky's going to do that much, but I think Georgia's the best team in the country, hands down, by a touchdown against anybody, Scott.
Well, Kentucky's defense is good enough to where they can, you know, hold them under 40, like you're saying.
That's what I thought, 35.
Maybe to 31, and maybe even 31, like you're saying. 35, 31 in that neighborhood. I don't think their offense could do much, but it's one of those games where, you know, Georgia, you just said it, they don't beat themselves. Since Kirby Smart has taken this program from very good to elite, it's a situation where you better win the game because they're not going to usually help you out. And so if they come in there and they play their normal game, they're focused, which they should be, they don't turn the ball over more than once, if that, then, you know, it's tough to imagine Kentucky covering. But again, it's one of those games where the Kentucky defense might be able to hold Georgia to 31, and it's a 31-10 final. And they're just sitting there going, gosh darn it, I laid 22.5. So I'm not going to lay, I'm not going to take. I kind of like your under here. I like that better than laying or taking. You just have to hope that, you know, Georgia doesn't score 45 on their own. But I think Kentucky's defense is decent enough to keep them in the 30s.
You got an SEC game under a total of 50. That's telling you something right there. That's telling you something right there, folks. You got to get into the mind of the odds maker. We're going to switch gears and we're going to talk about track and field because USC's playing UCLA, and it's going to be a track meet out there in Pasadena. I got some news for you. And odds makers think so as well. 75.5, Scott. And of course, USC's been putting up, both these teams been putting up huge numbers. And USC up to 2.5 as I looked this morning, combined their 14-6 on overs. Just an observation. I don't know about you, but I'm not sold on USC yet. And I think this is a bad match for them defensively, and it's a bad match for UCLA defensively. I don't know where you're leaning, but I probably got a pretty good idea where you're going.
Well, as far as, like USC is concerned, it's like that defense just makes you pause and say, are they really a legit contender? However, having said that,
Right.
these Pac-12 teams play such a different style of football. I could see the Pac-12 going into the bowl season and doing well because they're going to throw the ball, they're going to run the ball, they're going to run RPOs left and right and all that kind of good stuff. And some of the teams that are used to the plotting style of football, and I mean that relatively speaking, I'm not talking plotting 1980, I'm talking plotting 2022, that they're going to be kind of like, oh, okay, well, we saw this on film, but it's a little bit different when you see it right across the line of scrimmage from you. Having said all of that, listen, 4 of UCLA's last 6 games have landed in the 70s. The last 4 Trojan games, we've seen 72 points, 76 points, 82 points, 85 points. We're trending up. Anyway, USC's 7th in total yards per game, 10th in passing yards, 42 points per game. UCLA 37th in passing, 5th in total yards, 5th on the ground in rushing yards per game. They average nearly 40 points per game. The Bruins can't defend the pass. UCLA, USC, they're great against the pass. They're 98th. Great in Pac-12 standards. But as far as this is concerned, it's like, I just got to talk about it here and say, I know it might sound a little squarish, but I can see these two teams combining to go into the 80s. The last 4 times they met, all 4 games have gone over. I'm going to call for an over again. I'll probably be tuned into this game. I'm going to be really disappointed if all of a sudden these teams find defense and it's 17-14 at the half because I want to see some excitement. I will say this. We might actually finally see a crowd at Pasadena at the Rose Bowl. They've been getting about 20, 25,000 fans announced before. But, hey, we might get 60 or 70,000 or more in the stadium. So it'll be an electric atmosphere also, like it always should be in Pasadena. But okay, Tony, I'm going to say over 70, 75 and a half, over 76. I just got to go that route.
What do you think this is going to be, an in-town Pac-12 rivalry, slobber knocker, 13-10 grind out final? Hell no. They're both going to play to their strengths, and that's a couple of good quarterbacks, a couple of good play callers in Riley and Kelly. They're going to get innovative. They're both going to be gunning for the end zone every single play. Barring any major injury to either quarterback during the game. This and on top of that, Scott, this has a propensity. This has a better than average probability potentially being an overtime game.
Sure.
I think they're a lot more evenly matched than what people think they are.
It's funny. Also, you said slobber knocker, and I was just going to say that. I can remember I actually went to see Lawrence Phillips was a freshman. I was, of course, had been up in Las Vegas already for several years. Went to Pasadena. It was a 14-13 final score, like in 93 or 94, whenever he was a freshman. I'm going to tell you right now, also, Tony, to add to this mix, we're not going to see 14-13, well, maybe midway through the first quarter. But I was just going to say that, this is one of those games because of the hated rivalry. One team could be up 35-17 going in the fourth, and they're not going to let up the team with 35.
No.
They're going to keep firing away. So it's got that chance to pedal to the metal till the very end, even if there's a 17, 18-point margin throughout the course of the final quarter in this one.
I agree, and and USC's looking for style points because if they were to be in the lead big for whatever reason, Lincoln Riley's going to drop the hammer. He's trying to get into the Final Four here, and he's going to want to put up, beating UCLA 56-30 versus beating them 41-30 looks a lot better because there's a lot of public perception involved in this BCS. The Final Four poll, which you and I know is bogus, but the way those guys look at it, some of the guys shouldn't be on the committee. But that being said, I agree with you 100%, Scott.
Let's talk a little Big 12 action where 58 used to be a high total, but as we just heard with that Pac-12 matchup, it's well short of USC and UCLA. But that would be TCU at Baylor. TCU laying 2.5 to 3 points. Shop around if you like TCU. Plenty of lines out there that are under 3. If you like Baylor, take the 3. There's plenty of those out there too. As I mentioned, total sitting at 58. I'm going to throw it to you with this. Before last week's horrible, terrible, ugly performance by the Baylor Bears when they got shellacked by Kansas State in Waco, maybe the worst game played by Baylor since Aranda has arrived in Waco, TCU would have been about a 1-point neutral site favorite, which means at
Right.
home in Waco, Baylor would have been about a 2 to 3 point favorite if the game was played last week. Now we're looking at TCU laying 2.5 to 3 based off of what TCU did against Texas and what Baylor did against Kansas State. So I'm just going to throw that out there, and then I will let you fire away with your thoughts on this Big 12 clash.
Well, I'm a believer in TCU. We had a lean out on them last week on this show. I thought it was disrespectful. The line, they keep beating ranked opponents. They just keep beating them week after week after week after week, and you're waiting for them to pull a Syracuse and go, when are they going to nosedive? You know, is this that game? And I thought it might be till I watched Baylor last week. That was that was a Baylor team, Scott, and a Baylor coaching staff that I was unfamiliar with.
They didn't show up.
Can't you always, and look, all the credit in the world to Kansas State. That coach that came down from North Dakota has done nothing but put them on the friggin' map. We should have got him in Lincoln. You know, we dropped the ball there. We thought Frost was a all-state savior, but at the end of the day, if you aren't ready to play a football game, that Kansas State team and coaching staff, they'll expose you for not being ready. Now, Baylor's going to be ready this week. That being said, I'm sold on TCU. The 2.5 to 3, like you said, I had this in a pick 'em. I've got TCU on power ratings at -4. So I'm going to tell you to take TCU. If you can find 2.5, you're going to find the money line around -140, 145. My recommendation is TCU on the money line here.
I do want to say real quickly, because I like to be candid and I like to, talk about, and I know you do too, that we talk about the bad with the good. And last week I split my top plays, one with the Steelers on Sunday, but I lost with Baylor on Saturday. And listen, they were power rated ahead of Kansas State and everything else. They just didn't show up. So we ended up going 5-2 for the week, Tony, last week, and sitting at 60% now for the season, up over $5,000 in college and pro football combined. And I do have another 7-star, and I do have another 6-star going this weekend. And those college top plays now 9-3 this season. So we'll look to keep it going. And folks can go to our homepages over at DocSports.com to check out more of that. Really quick, I wanted to mention before we jump into the NFL too, Tony, that the World Cup begins this weekend. And I haven't had a play since, I think it was Sunday, but we're 12-3 on our last 15 soccer plays. And it's garbage time, except for maybe international friendlies, which I don't like to play this week. And then we'll be jumping back into it for the World Cup. So I want to tell everybody, check out World Cup, man, action. If you're watching it, you can check out DocSports.com. There's, I think, 4 or 5 of us that handicap and bet soccer, and it's been a nice run thus far, so folks can check that out this weekend and all through World Cup 2022.
I was going to say, follow me on Twitter. I believe you are at Scott Wins.
Correct.
And mine is at T George Sports, but I put a link up on my Twitter today because I don't do soccer. I hate soccer. I hated when my kids played soccer. I'm just an American football boy, no doubt about it. I discouraged it. But here's the deal. There's a really good article on how to approach and how to bet World Cup soccer that our mutual friend Bobby Faringo put up there on Doc Sports page. And the link to that article is on my Twitter today because I enjoyed the read. And, I'll be pestering Scott for some of his picks. Don't get me wrong. I'm not going to do it. But when I see 5-star, 6-star, 7-star up there from Scott Spreitzer, believe me, folks, when I tell you he's getting a freaking text and he better answer.
Started doing it in 2010 is when I got into soccer. And I've never hated it or anything like that, but I started capping it and betting it in 2010 during World Cup, and we've done it ever since. So I will read the article to myself. But, it's been really nice this year, this entire calendar year in soccer. So I'm a World Cup junkie. And, Tony, here's the thing, man. It's in my wheelhouse. Those games are going to be starting at 2 a.m. Pacific time up to about 11 a.m. Pacific time.
I was thinking about that.
I've already got a couple of little sports bars mapped out as to where I'm going to be at 3 o'clock in the morning when I get my work done so I can go check out the game.
There you go. Ladies and gentlemen, be sure and check out Scott's action over there. I'll tell you at the end of the show what I got going on this weekend. My college football has just been off the chain this year, and I got another 7-star myself, and I got to make up some ground in the NFL because the Chicago Bears were my 8-unit game of the year last week, and I got my ass handed to me in the worst possible fashion ever. That being said, that's water under the bridge. We're moving forward. And this week, speaking about big games here, if the New York Jets, Scott, beat the New England Patriots, they are number one over the Miami Dolphins in the AFC East. Believe it or not, a couple weeks ago, I had a big 7-unit play on New England against the Jets. They won 22-7. Where my best quarterback, exactly Wilson from the Jets for the Patriots. Right. And you might want to check the weather on this. We lost some value if you're a Jets backer here. 3.5 down to 3, total 39. I know there's some weather, especially up in the Buffalo area, Scott. I don't know how far down south of Buffalo, New York, this trickles down to Boston. But there could be some weather involved here as well, but that total might be showing that a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, both of these teams are hot. Belichick's at it again. His team's won 4 of 5. They've covered 5 of 6. The defense has played well. Interesting note, by the way, when New England did beat the Jets on October 30th, they were a 3-point road favorite. They're 3 right now at home. It's the same line. They're playing well, and once again, we're talking about a field goal spread, even though it has switched venues. They harassed Zach Wilson all game long in that 22-17 win. They forced 3 picks. Here comes the Jets, though, 5-1 straight up ATS on their 6-game run. And like New England, it's not been a ton of offense. It's not been anything smooth on the opposite side of the football. It's been defense. They only gained 310 yards total against Buffalo. But Zach Wilson in 6 games, 4 touchdowns, 5 interceptions, 57% passer. It's amazing that this team can be atop the AFC East ahead of, like you said, Buffalo and Miami if they win this game. I like the under here. It's a little scary because it's 38, but I could see this being a 20-14 type of game by the time it's said and done. It's not going to be a personal play over at Doc Sports. It won't make the premium card, but for the sake of the show, I'll lean towards the under between the Jets and Pats, Tony.
Let's talk about.
I'm sorry.
I wouldn't be a bit surprised. I'm just telling you, the Jets, paper tigers here. Belichick owns these guys, man. He's owned them since day one. If he comes in there and throws that ball around like he did in the first game at home, and he does that at Foxborough, Patriots will put him away, despite the play of their quarterback, which I'm not sold on for New England right now. But New England's in last place in the division, and they're 5-4. I mean, they're in last place in the division. Of course they're going to be ready to play, Scott.
Yeah, if they get some help, they could be tied for first by the end of Sunday. If they get some help from some other teams. Crazy stuff. Tony, let's look at the Eagles at the Colts. Eagles laying 6.5, total 44. Look ahead line of this game was 10 before last week's results. Eagles played their worst game of the season. I guess they got caught up in that Baylor game plan on Saturday, and they tried to, copy what the Bears did. But anyway, they lost, man. They just had a bad game. It was between them playing horribly and some really bad officiating, not to put the blame on the officials for Philly losing that. But, boy, there was some really bad. That was an F grade by the officials. Those guys ought to be suspended for a week.
Right.
And they made bad calls for both teams. But anyway, I heard a lot of talk since that loss on Monday. Here we go again. Jalen Hurts, is he as good as his numbers? Well, he passes the darn eye test for me. I'll tell you that much. And listen, my eyes might not be great, hence the glasses, but I don't need to have great eyes to see that Jalen Hurts is doing the right thing with this football team. 9 games into the season, they have a bad game. Give me a break. That's going to happen. As far as this game is concerned, you can run on the Philly defense. That is one thing that Philly has a problem with. And guess who's coming to town with the Indianapolis Colts? Mr. Taylor with that running game. Tony, new head coach at Indy, Jeff Saturday, off to a 1-0 start. I thought the best thing he did was say, Sam Ehlinger, you're not ready. Matt Ryan, get your butt in there.
Right.
And they got the win last weekend.
Yeah, well, it's not a buy sign on Indy because by the way, it was the Raiders.
Yeah, exactly.
Raiders are inventing ways to lose football games. I mean, they're coming up with different. I mean, I will tell you one thing: Josh McDaniels, his coaching staff, they're innovative because they're
Yes.
inventing stuff to lose with.
Exactly.
Period. I mean, it's ridiculous. And Indy, I think Jeff Saturday caught lightning in a bottle. I mean, I saw something today on the NFL Network. They were comparing him to 5 presidents in the United States that all were elected to office and never had any political experience, including Donald Trump. I mean, it does happen. People get promoted, put into positions, and sometimes they perform well and sometimes they didn't. I think the rah-rah speech and getting the offensive line, which was deplorable. Bear in mind, that Colts team, the week before they played the Raiders, were 0 for 14 on third down and didn't have a touchdown. So whether that's a buy sign or it's a sell sign on the Raiders for sure. The good luck in Denver and against that defense. And of course, bottom line here is I'm looking for a teaser side. I'm taking the Eagles down to -0.5 on a half of a teaser. You might be able to stick them with the team we're going to talk about next with the Minnesota Vikings, who are a home dog. But I'm not can Philly go in here and beat these guys 35-7? Yeah, they can. They're pissed. Sure. They had a bad night. And that coach of theirs, Ron Rivera, coached his ass off. He got his ass coached off Monday Night Football. He did. He got beat by a lesser team, a team that they beat them 24-9 earlier in the season, manhandled them. And they had a lot of calls go against them, which is unusual because you're at home and yet the calls are, it was just a crazy game. But I do think the Eagles bounce back here, but I'm not willing to lay 6.5 on the road with them. I think the total's about right, actually, Scott. I think the total's pretty sharp, around 44-ish right here. But I'll tease if Eagles aren't in one of your teasers here, I don't see a team that has one loss, had a bad night, getting back-to-back losses. So you got to win the game by 1 point. You're getting the tease down to a 0.5 point. I think there's some value there. Let's switch gears to a line that I can't figure out. Dallas on the road, back-to-back weeks up there in the North Division, off just a shocking loss to Green Bay. Basically, Aaron Rodgers had 3 really good passes the whole game, and they lose. Dallas was 195-0 when leading in the fourth quarter as a football franchise by 14 points. 195 games. Well, welcome to the coaching tree, Mike McCarthy, because here you go. You just lost that game. Minnesota, on the other hand, and I just did a podcast, Scott, with a here on the internet. I won't mention the guy, but it's on my Twitter. But we talked about, and he said something, and I want to get your feedback on this, because right now Minnesota is a 1.5 point home dog, and the total is at 47.5. He said this is a big letdown spot for Minnesota. I disagree. Every game last year and damn near every game this year, it's down to the last second with these guys. And whether you like Kirk Cousins or don't like Kirk Cousins, and I understand that Jefferson and Thielen are tremendous hands guys, 2 of the top, you can put them both in the top 10 in the league in wide receivers on one team. It's kind of like having Waddle and Hill, like Tua has down in Miami, Sure. But at the end of the day, it's not a letdown spot. That's how they win every game. They don't choke. They just don't choke down the stretch. They win a lot of games doing that. So I don't think it's a letdown spot. It's just business as usual. And I think they're getting disrespect with this. This is a 1-loss team that went up and beat Buffalo, albeit it was crazy. fumbling at the goal line, Scott. But if Minnesota is not considered a good NFL team, then I don't know who is.
Yeah, the reason it's where it is as far as the point spread or the metrics. I mean, you look at Dallas, they're top 10.
Right,
This is
right.
one of my favorite metrics is yards per point margin. Dallas is top 10, Minnesota's outside the top 20. So when sharp cappers and bettors start looking at that stuff, they're thinking, okay, the Cowboys, they should be the slight favorite in this road game. I don't generally, like, if it's college and you have Kentucky upsets Alabama, there's a letdown the next week. I generally don't get into letdowns in the NFL, in most pro sports. Like, I like an NBA team that lost by 40, and they're a good team. They just they mailed it in. I'll jump on them the next time or whatever. But in pro sports, it's hard for me to find, or just to sink my teeth into saying a letdown spot, or this is a spot where they're going to be energized more. It's a different mindset than you and I have, Tony, with these guys that are, college all-stars who are now making millions of dollars in the NFL. They're not mere mortals, put it that way. And so, but I see why the Cowboys are favored. It's based on those metrics that I mentioned. Dallas doesn't do a lot of the aerial game. They're going to have to run the football. You've got a good running game for the most part for this team. They're bad against the run. That's the scary point if you like Dallas. They're not too hot against the run. And, of course, when you got Minnesota, you're talking about a really nice running back behind Cousins who could maybe churn out some ground yardage. I think you're going to see both of these teams look to run first, to run second, and pass third. And because of that, that total at 47.5, Tony, I think is not a bad spot to play an under. I could very much see this being a game that lands in the low 40s because I don't think either team is going to come out and just fire the ball up, through the air. Neither team does that. So you've got the Vikings who are off the miracle win, the Cowboys off the miracle loss. By the way, thank you very much, because I ended up going 3-1 last week, and my final play was Green Bay, and it looked 2-2. I looked dead to rights, and I remember texting a couple of people who also had bet Green Bay in the little circle that we have, and I said, if you ever hear me back Aaron Rodgers again this season, just slap me silly across the head. And he comes back and wins the game. And my next text was, I love this guy. I love the Packers. So ends up getting a winning week for us. But I will say in this game, Tony, at 47 and a hook, I like the under in this contest. I think both teams will be a little bit closer to the vest and try to establish the running game, which keeps that clock running.
How did Green Bay beat Dallas? I'll tell you how they beat them. Running the football to set up play action pass.
Sure.
If Dalvin Cook can run the football successfully here, which I think he can, play action pass with Jefferson running around and Thielen and Hawkinson from the tight end they got from Detroit, and Kirk Cousins. He's not playing in prime time, just a afternoon game. If you got him in prime time, you got to fade him. But it's not. I'm just telling you. I got a slight lean on Minnesota here.
This sounds like more than a slight lean, Tony. I'm telling you.
Yeah, I think Minnesota's for real. I like their coach. I like the way I think Cousins is a middle-of-the-road quarterback. He won't kill you unless it's a big game in prime time. Then he'll kill you. But other than that, I don't have a buy sign on Dallas. Green Bay was a bad football team, and they beat them. And on back-to-back roadies, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. But I think Minnesota and a teaser here with the Eagles would be absolutely beautiful. That's how I see it.
Minnesota, the Eagles are going to be two of the more used teams, rightly so, for a teaser play this week. What's going on with you, man? Let's let everybody know what's going on this weekend over at Tony George Sports.
We've had the last 5 Saturdays, we've went 13-4 against the spread and hit 3 7-unit plays, including last week. I had Florida State all over Syracuse like a dirty shirt, laying 7. I thought that was a gift. I've got another 7-unit, 7-star pick this week. I know Scott does too. He's been crushing it. We're 21-7 with top picks of 6 units or more dating back through last year. 13-4. I don't know what that percentage is for the last 5 Saturday cards.
I do. It's damn good.
I made you some money. Unfortunately, I helped you give it away last Sunday. We'll bounce back. My Sunday card is going to be littered with totals plays. I'm going to do a flat bet type card, no top pick. And I'm leaving the Thursday night game alone. I hate Thursday night games, and who knows what's going to happen there. Probably, I'll put out a free pick on the total on that one maybe tomorrow on Thursday. But I'll have those cards all weekend. College basketball's heating up as well. So be sure and get over to Docs, take advantage of that free $60, and I'll make your money back for you in the NFL this weekend, folks. I had a bad week, and I tell it like it is. I don't pull any punches. If I'm kicking ass, I'm telling you I'm kicking ass, and I'm in the same breath. If I'm stinking up the joint. Well, I'll bounce back on Sunday. Stay steady in the NFL, Scott.
Sounds good, man. Let's get in this weekend, Tony. And again, check out the daily picks and packages from Tony, myself, everybody at DocSports.com. And also, again, World Cup starting this weekend for you soccer junkies. Listen, you don't even have to like the sport to be able to make some money off of it.
Yeah.
That's how I started betting NASCAR. I hated the left turn circuit, as we used to call it back in the day. And I saw something funny on a Saturday night doing the Stardust show in 1995. And I said, I got to start following the sport a little bit. There looks like there might be some openings here. And I've been doing it ever since. Am I a guy who wants to watch it constantly? Yeah, I will for betting purposes. But if I was just a guy sitting around without a bet, I probably would tune in to something else. And listen, the soccer, as long as you like having a chance to make some money, that's all I say is check it out. But again, daily sports, college basketball well underway, of course, the NBA, the NHL, and college and pro football. And we're both cleaning up this year in college and pro football. So check it out on the home pages. Click on that free $60 account link so you can get it set up for that if you're not yet a member at DocSports.com. For Tony George, I'm Scott Spreitzer. We are DocSports.com. You know what to do, folks. Let's put them in the win column.